In this lesson, we'll finish off our materials by taking advantage of the Smart Mask. First, we'll mask between the base paints and the base metal. Let's have a look at our base paints folder. The paint itself is made up of 4 layers: the highlights, the grunge, the striping, and the base paint. Now we want to mask between all of these and the iron rough, which sits at the very bottom. There's a couple of ways we could do this. We could take the iron rough out of the folder and paint black into the base paint's mask. But in this situation, I only want the iron rough to sit under the paint layers and not my glossy paint. I'll undo to keep it in the same folder. Instead, I'll add a subfolder, name it Paint Layers, and drag the 4 layers into that folder. If I disable it, we can view the base metal underneath. Now that we have our subfolder, we can add a Smart Mask to blend between the base metal. I'll go to my shelf under Smart Mask and select Paint Old. I'll simply drag and drop it onto my Paint Layers folder. Now let's go and adjust the parameters by clicking on the mask effect and inverting it. And it's really up to you on how grungy you want these to look. Personally, I like it a little less destroyed looking, so I'll decrease the balance. Now, zooming in to where some of the paint is chipping, I want to add just a touch of height to the paint, so it looks like there's a little bit of a subtle highlight and depth between the materials. Now, using the sliders might be a bit difficult if you want precise control, so we can click on the Set Value icon, which will allow you to input a numeric value. I just want a slight bump effect, so I'll type in 0.03. Now, if we roll the light over the model, we can see we have some nice variation between the materials. It's always recommended that you don't just throw a Smart Mask on and call it done. So if we want to remove or add some scratches like the previous lesson, we can add a paint effect to the mask. Now, this is going to behave a little bit differently than our previous paint effects. Now, if I paint white, it's actually removing the effect. And if I paint black, it's adding to the effect, which may seem a little bit odd. So let's go to the mask view mode by alt-clicking on the mask. Looking at the mask, white is representing the paint layer and black is representing the base metal. If I paint white, it's removing the base metal. And when I paint black, it's revealing more of the base metal. But what if I want to reveal the Smart Mask that we just added? Well, you can actually use the Erase tool by hitting 2 and reveal the mask underneath by erasing what we just painted. So for now, I'll just erase all the painting I did for the time being. Now we have one more material to add a mask to, and that's our dirt, which is sitting way at the top. Before we tackle it, we just want to adjust a few of our current materials so we can see the effect more clearly. I'll change the base paint to a mid-gray. I'll lower the roughness to around 0.3 for more of a shine. And I'll change my mind about the striping. I'm going to make it a little bit more rough to around 0.8. And that highlight intensity is a bit too much, so I'll lower it to around 30. You can see how easily it is for us to change the entire look with a few clicks. Now, feel free to experiment with some different color schemes. I'll enable my dirt and put it into its own folder. And since we have a layer called dirt already, I'll name the folder dirt_group. And drag and drop that layer into the folder. I'll add a dust occlusion mask to the dirt layer. It's fairly subtle, as you can see with the mask enabled. I'll add another fill layer and name this dirt_top. I'll sample the original dirt base color and just hue shift it over to something a little bit more red. And change the roughness to around 0.4. This time I'll use the Surface Worn Smart Mask. This is quite strong in the base color, so I'll lower the opacity just to give it a bit more surface variation. let's keep things neat and tidy by collapsing the folders. And well, it looks like we have most of our folders and layers set up. Now we still have another half of a model to do. So in our next lesson, I'll show you how to copy the entire layer set onto the legs.